I want to give you one more, some Beispiel, a sidebar.
An example.
It's a very interesting story. I've been waiting for 40 years to tell it to someone. So let me start at the beginning. In 1961, my father called me up. My mother had passed in 60, and he said, there's a big memorial going on in New York today. It's the 50th anniversary of the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire.
Oh, yeah.
Now, don't forget, my father was an activist. And he said, everyone's going to be there. So I was working. I was supposed to work that day. I had 2 young children. I said, who's everyone, Papa? I never called him anything but Papa. He said, well, Mayor Wagner will be there.
Yeah.
And David Dubinsky. David Dubinsky was his hero. A labor organizer.
Ladies Garment Workers Union.
International Ladies Garment Workers Union.
2
million members. New York's biggest industry. David Dubinsky was there. And then my father said, and Eleanor Roosevelt's going to be there. And I wonder if she'll remember me. Now, that struck me like a bolt from the blue. And I said, why should she remember you from a time as a in the settlement house? And she says, no, that was a long time ago. She helped me when I tried to organize the paper box workers in 1926, and she came down with her friends and marched with me and was arrested. I said, Eleanor Roosevelt was arrested? She said, yes. They took her to the Mercer Street precinct, and they were arrested and released. Now, you have to understand, when you're 30, you look at someone at 70, you think they're delusional. So I said, well, okay, Papa. I didn't know what to tell him, but I couldn't go to that convocation. It was, I think, in Union Square, and she was there with Frances Perkins. Frances Perkins was the first woman cabinet member in American history, and she got a start as the Secretary of Labor in New York with the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. Frances Perkins. She was there too. So time passes, and now I'm retired, and it's, I think, 2002, something like that. And thinking over the things, my father passed away 30 years before, some of the things that I went over with my father, and one which intrigued me was Eleanor Roosevelt coming to help my father in 1926. Now, I know my history. Her husband was already Secretary of Navy for the United States in World War I, and he already had polio. Polio was 1924, I believe. So she had her hands full as a woman, as a wife. So she came down to help him this tiny strike of paper box workers. So I decided to go to the library and research it. Now, I can't tell you how many hours I spent, and I'm not a bad researcher, looking for a story on Eleanor Roosevelt. I looked at the cards, I forgot what to call them, and I looked at the tapes. And I was speaking to one of the head librarians at FAU. And if there's ever a platonic ideal of a public servant, it's a librarian. And I explained the problem to this fairly young woman, and she said, 1926. I said, yes. I said, I can't find anything. I looked in every index I looked. She said, how are you looking? I said, Eleanor Roosevelt. She said, sir, in 1926, women were known by their husband's name. She wasn't Eleanor Roosevelt yet. she was Mrs. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I couldn't get over it. It never dawned on me. I mean, I spent a week in the library. I picked up the index, Mrs. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and here's what I found, and I'm going to read it to you. Headline, New York Times, December 9th, 1926. Notables in strike march. Mrs. F.D. Roosevelt among them. 8 women pickets arrested. The striking paper box makers staged a mass picket demonstration on the Lower West Side yesterday afternoon. There were said to be 300 of them in the lines that marched slowly through the district from West Houston and Green Streets, where many box factories are located. 8 women were arrested for not obeying the police order to move on. They were booked at the Mercer Street station on charges of disorderly conduct. Half a dozen women of prominence accompanied the strikers, and they walked quietly along with the others. Those who accompanied the strikers were Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt, Mrs. Gordon Norrie, Mrs. Samuel J. Benz, Miss Marion Dickerman, Miss Dorothy Kenyon, and Miss Evelyn Preston. Apparently, when you got married, you lost your identity. The arrests were made while the police were dispersing a small crowd of strikers who were lingering in Green Street and obstructing the sidewalk. Now, if she's not a rare human being, you tell me who is. I can't get over the actions that she took. And I hope you enjoyed listening to it. I've been waiting a long time to tell the story about my father.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Very good.
And I'm going to shut this off, hopefully. I think I just
hope
closed.
you enjoyed it half as much as I did preparing it and reading it to you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Mom. You remember it all.
Sure.